Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Dobbs. I'm managing editor for Reminder Publications. And this evening, Focus Springfield is going to be hosting a debate between the two candidates for Governor's Council. Those candidates are Judge Mary Hurley, who is also a former mayor of Springfield, and attorney Jeff Morneau, who is the president of the Hampden County Bar Association. We have a panel of two distinguished journalists from the area, Cary from New England Public Radio, and Matt Zafransky from the Western Massachusetts Politics and Insight blog. So this evening we're going to explore just exactly what the Governor's Council, what they do, and what these two candidates believe should be their role if they are elected to that position. So first of all, we're going to have an opening statement, and we're going to lead off with Judge Hurley.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you to Focus Springfield. Thank you to Mike Dobbs for being the moderator and to our media panelists as well. And I thank the TV audience for viewing this evening. My name is Mary Hurley. I am a five-term city councilor, former mayor of the city of Springfield, and I was privileged to be a district court judge for 19 and a half years. Before that and after my retirement, I've been practicing law in this area. I'm running for Governor's Council because I believe it's a very important job. The role of the Governor's Council is to approve the nominees of the governor for judgeships, clerkships, and parole board members. And as such, it is important that we get the right kind of people and that we also have people who represent the diversity of our communities. And I fully support the nominees that are going to come out here to Western Mass, be people of various ethnic backgrounds, or various minorities, and also more women. It is important we get judges with good demeanor. It's important we get judges who know the law, are well respected in their community, and can deliver justice. My concern is that we have a shortage of judges, which is one of the motivating factors for me running. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Hurley. Our next opening statement will be from Attorney Morneau.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbs. Thank you, media panel members, and thank you, audience, for listening. My name is Jeff Morneau. I am a progressive Democrat, and I'm a first-time candidate for public office. I'm running for this office because I know how important judges are to our community. I was born and raised in Holyoke. I was raised there with my two brothers. I went to Holyoke High School, and I'm very proud to say that I am the first person in any generation of my family to go to and graduate from a four-year college. I went to Providence College. I got my law degree right here in Springfield at Western New England University, and I got a master's of law degree from Georgetown University in labor and employment law. After getting that degree, I came back to my community here in Hampden County, in Holyoke, and I started a private practice where for the last 15 years I have represented individuals and working families fighting against things like discrimination, wage theft, unfair and deceptive acts and practices, and fighting against unfair treatment and for equal access to justice for all. I'm president of the Hampden County Bar Association, an association of over 1,000 members of attorneys and judges. I'm chair of its Judiciary Committee, which provides advice and recommendation to the Judicial Nominating Commission on judges, and I have served as a member of the Massachusetts Bar Association's Joint Nominating Committee, which provides recommendations to the governor on judicial applicants. I'm looking forward to the debate tonight and providing you with more information about me and my candidacy and the differences between myself and my opponent in this race. Thank you.
Thank you. And as moderator, I get the opportunity of asking the first question. I'm going to direct it to Mr. Morneau. You describe yourself as a progressive Democrat, and I know a lot of people on the national scene, when they're talking about, for instance, the Supreme Court, talk about activist judges. Well, are you going to be an activist Governor's Council in terms of how you evaluate the candidates that you're going to be getting from a Republican governor? So could you define what you see your role as a progressive would be if you were elected to the council?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. As a progressive Democrat, I see Progressive Democrat in this particular race, as it applies to this position, to be somebody who's looking at common problems that have existed in our society for a while. For example, now we have the opioid crisis, and somebody who's looking for new solutions, creative solutions to common problems. So how do I see my role in that regard? What I intend to do is basically a lot of the things that I have done and have been doing as Bar Association president here in Hampden County, which is reaching out to the community, reaching out to the legal community in Hampshire, Franklin, Berkshire, and Hampden County, and trying to identify lawyers at an early stage in their career that have that display themselves as potential judicial applicants down the road, people that we as Bar Association leaders can identify as potential great judges, and reach out to them and talk to them about the possibility of public service down the road. Because at the end of the day, that's what a judge is. A judge is a public servant, and we need to really try to help to identify the people that we think would make great judges early on in their career and not wait for them to apply. Because quite frankly, in my opinion, a lot of the best potential judges are not getting into the application pool, and we need to do a better job of reaching out to the community and getting them to apply, because if you don't get the best in the beginning, you're not going to get the best out at the end of the application process. And as a governor's counselor, I want to make sure that Governor Baker, or whoever the governor happens to be, gets it right. And I also want to make sure that we get the best. And in order to get the best, you have to get the best to apply. So that's how I see my role as governor's counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Hurley, you have 2 minutes to answer the same question.
Thank you. I would be an activist in terms of solving one of the main problems that was my motivation in running for this office. I experienced firsthand the shortage of judges in Western Massachusetts. I'm talking about the district courts. Since 2008, with the financial crisis, we haven't had the number of judges that we had at that time. We've been as low as a third of our workforce going vacant. As of last week, I spoke to Chief Justice Paul Daly. He indicated that in the district court there were 16 vacancies. And of those 16 vacancies, 9 were in Western Massachusetts. That's not right, because to me, justice delayed is justice denied. I'll be on the lookout for motivating and encouraging young blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and women to apply for judgeships, clerkships, and parole board memberships, because I feel it's important that the judges, clerks, and parole board members reflect the communities that they're going to serve in. I think it's very important that we have a bench that is mindful of the types of characters of the community, that are aware of what goes on within that community. Having sat in every court in the Western Mass and several in other parts of the Massachusetts, I understand that there's a different culture and a different community that you go into when you're serving as a judge. And when you're a clerk, you should be someone that's mindful of your responsibilities to serve the public as a whole and to deliver justice fairly and swiftly. At this point in time, with a shortage of judges, and you can ask Judge Boyle from Springfield District Court, justice delayed is justice denied. You have a right to expect when you go to court, you're going to have your case heard that day. Unfortunately, because of the shortage of judges, there's been too many times that cases have been continued. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Hurley. Cary Najeri of New England Public Radio, it's your turn to ask a question.
Well, just as a follow-up to your statement, Judge Hurley, about the shortage of judges, can you explain, as a Governor's Council member, first of all, what does a Governor's Council do in regards to a shortage of judges? Why is there a shortage of judges? And how would you, as an elected Governor's Council, remedy that situation?
I have spoken to the various state reps and state senators throughout the 8th District, and the 8th District is Hampden, Hampshire, Franklin, and Berkshire County. They have been aware of the shortage of judges because they've had their constituents complain about not being able to get to court for a hearing or expecting to be heard in court and not having their day in court that day. I experienced it firsthand at Chicopee District Court based upon the fact that they were going to take my jury judge away. They did take my jury judge away. They were intending to send Chicopee cases to Springfield District Court. I said, no, you're not going to do that. Well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to do both myself. So I reduced the number of cases in the primary session, took care of everything that had to be done on a daily basis there, and instead of being able to get to a jury case at 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning, I couldn't get to a case until 11 or 11:30. I'd explain to the jurors, I'm sorry, there's going to be delays. I'd let them go out and take care of errands or what have you before they were impaneled. I would then hear all of the pleas on all of the cases, whether it was in the primary session or the jury session. But what would happen is, because of the fact there was only one of me, instead of being able to get a whole case done in one day, it would carry over to the next day. And I'd have to say to somebody else who was there for maybe a 2-hour jury trial, I'm sorry, there's no other judge to hear that short case, as there used to be when I had another judge there. This is happening all over the region. Bill Boyle will tell you they're supposed to have 6 to 7 judges in Springfield District Court. There are days when there's 3 or 4 judges, and they're lucky if they get 5 judges, which means maybe 2 jury sessions can't occur, which means that people who come to court and expect to be out by noon don't get out till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Justice delayed is justice denied. It is our responsibility and my responsibility to, with the support of the legislative delegation from this area, to go to Boston and to let Charlie Baker know this is what's going on out here in Springfield. And why is it that you've got 8 districts, 16 vacancies, and 9 of the 16 are in Western Mass, in District 8 alone? It's a compelling number, and it's real, and people live it every day, and that's not right. Thank you.
And the same question for Attorney Morneau.
Thank you. There's no doubt that people in the West, Hampden, Hampshire, Franklin, Berkshire County, believe, and rightfully so, that Boston thinks that Massachusetts ends when the Massachusetts Turnpike changes from 3 lanes to 2 in Worcester, and that we get shortchanged out here in Western Massachusetts. And we need a strong advocate that can collaborate with the other leaders of the bars, the bar associations from the 4 counties, the elected officials, the state representatives, the state senators, the sheriffs, the district attorney's office, when there are judicial vacancies. When there are judicial vacancies, we need to fill them, and we need to fill them more quickly, and we need to fill them with the best, and we need to fill them with diverse candidates. But the facts is that there's 158 district court judges at max at any time. There are 8 districts, which means that in this district, we would expect to have 19 to 20 district court judges, and we do. In the Superior Court, there are 82 potential Superior Court judges. We would expect, with 8 districts, to have 10 to 11, and we have them here. There's no doubt that our courts are way busier today than they were in 2010, 2008, 2000, the turn of the century, and we need more judges. But when it comes to the fair share, and when it comes to judicial equality, and when it comes to regional diversity, we have that. Do we need more? Yes. The way to get more is to collaborate with all the legislative leaders and to influence the government out in Boston to make sure that we have enough people here to do the work. But we have the representation. The numbers that my opponent is providing tonight are simply inaccurate. If you go on the Judicial Nominating Commission's website, you will see that there are 34 total vacancies in the state, not 17, and that there are not necessarily just 7 vacancies here in Western Mass. The bigger problem for Western Massachusetts is keeping the slower courthouses open, such as Orange and Great Barrington, where the closure of those courts would cause serious transportation problems for people in those areas and would cause major access to justice issues. That would be my concern, and that's how I would handle the situation of to the extent that it exists with regard to judicial vacancies. Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, I was just going to say, because Mr. Morneau mentioned something specific, we're going to give Judge Hurley a 1-minute rebuttal.
Well, Mr. Morneau doesn't know the numbers. These discussions were had with Chief Justice Dali of the District Court. He's the one who gave me the numbers. He should know. And yes, there are 158 positions. There used to be over 160. And there still are district court vacancies that are filled by judges who don't get assigned to a particular court. They're called circuit judges. And those numbers are not included by Mr. Morneau. Right now, we have 142 vacancies. That's where the Chief Justice got the number of 16 vacancies. Mr. Morneau doesn't know how to read the list. The other listed vacancies were ones where they were closed. The position applications are not being taken. They're closed. And so, my friends, I would indicate to you that you should know the issues in the job that you're running for. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a question now from Matt Zafransky.
Following up on the previous question, we understand that the problem has a certain magnitude, and there's some debate as to how big it is and where it is concentrated. But beyond collaborating with legislators, what do you envision as the role of a governor's counselor to be in terms of how to actually bring those extra judges or bring that extra judicial management of cases that are coming out here? What are you specifically going to do other than just talking to legislators? Because it strikes me that many governor's counselors would do the same thing. What can you do? What can you individually bring to make that happen in Western Mass?
And who you're directing this to first, Matt?
Whoever, Judge Hurley.
Okay.
Basically, as I indicated, Matt, I am going to speak to Charlie Baker. I'm going to speak to his counsel. When they were out here, myself, Judge Boyle, and one of the other judges from Springfield District Court, when they had a seminar, and he appeared at it, both his legal counsel and assistant deputy legal counsel, and we pled the case for Springfield District Court. I would indicate to you Judge Michael Rips, 2015, Judge Fred Rutberg, 2015, Judge Bob Gordon, 2015, Judge Rita Koenigs, 2014, Judge Phil Beatty, Circuit Judge, 2014, Judge Barbalonga, 2006, Judge John Schubert, 2010, and Judge Kenneth Cody, 2009. These are people I worked with. Their positions have not been filled. And I'm going to make sure that Judge Cary, the Chief Justice for administration of the whole court system, Judge Dolly's aware of the shortages. And again, it's a question of regional equity. If we have 8 districts, why is it that 9 of the 16 vacancies are in Western Mass? And these are people I worked with. These are not positions in courthouses that, there's going to be a closure on. And by the way, if there is a closure, guess what? Those cases still have to be heard someplace. And we want drug courts. We want mental health courts. We want a valor court for our veterans. Who's going to where's the body going to come from to go to these courts? I'm going to go down with the assistance of everybody and anybody I can and plead the case for Western Mass. And I think that's the obligation of a governor's council. Thank you.
Attorney Morneau, your turn.
Sure. Happy to respond to that. Thank you. The real answer to the question is there's not really a lot you can do without the cooperation of the legislature. And that's because, maybe my opponent doesn't know this, but there is a legislative cap that went in the 1970s that says that at no time can you have more than 158 sitting district court judges. Now, occasionally some people come on recall, like Judge Rips is going to do, like my opponent could have done but did not do. So you can't legislatively, Governor Baker or whoever the governor is, cannot have more than 158 sitting district court judges at any one time. So the cap is the problem. And the cap, like I said, was put in the 1970s. Courts have gotten significantly busier since the 1970s. So the cap needs to be changed if we want to get more judges across the state, across the Commonwealth, and here in Western Massachusetts, especially in the district court. That's really the only way to do it. Now, part of it is that there were a lot of retirements in 2014, including my opponent, who retired at a time when there was a change in an obscure law that significantly increased the pensions, the retirement pensions of judges, if they retired after July of 2014. So there were a lot of retirements after July of 14, and those positions are being filled. But My opponent had an opportunity when she was presiding justice in Chicopee District Court. She had the ear of the leaders of the trial court when these courts had these vacancies, when these courts were that busy and didn't get the job done then. And I don't think that any single person can go down and knock on Charlie Baker's door or any one individual's door and say, hey, give me more judges out here in Western Massachusetts. Bullying doesn't work that way. Politics doesn't work that way. Out here in Western Massachusetts, in order to get things done, we all know that it takes collaboration with a lot of different people in a lot of different counties. Thank you.
Here.
I think I'd like to
I
respond.
was going to say, we're going to do a little bit more response here, so Judge Hurley, you have a moment for a rebuttal there.
The fact of the matter is the cap that he's talking about from 1970, all of these people were sitting in judicial chairs hearing cases in courthouses. Every one of the names that I read off, 9 people. We got shortchanged. He refuses to acknowledge that because he denied it to begin with, and when he's wrong, he won't admit he's wrong. That's where the problem comes in. And I'm telling you that I can go down there and plead the case firsthand because I lived it at Chicopee District Court. And we did plead, and we got nowhere. And we had a governor's council who didn't acknowledge the problem either. Mr. Morneau's mentor, Mr. Albano, apparently didn't recognize there was an
Okay,
issue either.
We still got some time. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I keep going?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. That was, the cap was there. It's been in place. Those people I worked with. And when I retired in 2014, my job was filled. Judge Koenig's retired the same day I did. Her job has still not been filled in the Berkshires. And the Berkshires is really getting shortchanged. And it is something that we can bring to the attention of people who are willing to listen. And we're going to make a case down there, and I'm going to get the job done. I came out of retirement to do this, and I pledge to the people of the 8th District,
Okay, now
I will
we're
get the job
we're
done.
at the end of our
Thank
time
you.
here. Thank you.
And I don't get a chance. Is that how it works?
Well, no. I'm
just checking.
just give me a moment here, okay? Since we're in a debate situation and we do have follow-up, all right. You have 1 minute, the same as Judge Hurley did.
I don't need a minute. I just say to the reporters, check the facts, go on the website, call the governor's chief legal counsel, call the head of the Judicial Nominating Commission. You will get the numbers, and they will speak for themselves.
Okay. So we're back to Cary Najiri with another question.
Well, the Governor's Council is not only responsible just for advice and consent on the governor's judicial nominations, but as well as members of the Parole Board, the Appellate Tax Board, the Industrial Accident Review Board, notaries and justices of the peace. Many people don't know that. I want to find out, how do you go about selecting people to be on those boards? Do you have a litmus test or prerequisites when it comes to selecting people for not only judgeships, but on those various boards?
Is that a question for
Yes.
me?
Attorney Morneau, yes.
I don't have a litmus test for anything except for selections onto the Supreme Judicial Court. I have indicated that I do have a litmus test for that particular court, and it has to be somebody who is in favor of a woman's right to choose, is in favor of marriage equality, and against the death penalty. Those are 3 very important democratic values that I think that the sitting Supreme Court justice here in Massachusetts has to have. If you don't have those 3 values, then it would be a no vote for me. For the rest of the other positions, I do not have a litmus test, because each particular judge, depending upon what court you're sitting in, whether it be on the Appellate Tax Board or Department of Industrial Review Board, they all have to have, I think, different qualifications, experience, work ethic, temperament. They all require a little bit of a different skill set. So, for example, somebody on the appeals court, you're looking for somebody who has, really good writing skills. You're looking for that in all the judges, but it's not quite as important for Department of Industrial Accidents position, or for being a notary, or for being on the parole board. So I'm looking at the whole package of the candidate. What does this potential candidate bring to the table for the position? And that includes not only their work experience, but their personal experience. Where did they come from? What are they about? What are they going to be like? What are their decisions like? What are their values? What are their beliefs? How are they going to serve the public? Are they truly interested in public service? So those are the things that I'm interested in, is getting a feel for the person and how they're going to be on any of those particular boards. Thank you.
Same question, Judge Hurley.
Yeah, I really don't think that we have that much disagreement about what are important things, and that is that a judge is there to interpret the laws as they exist, not as they want them to be. And the death penalty, a woman's right to choose, all of those things are the law of the land. And the judge takes an oath when they're sworn in to support those laws. And I think it's also important that you have someone who has a good demeanor, a good judicial temperament, has patience, and has a vast knowledge of the area of the law where they're going to be serving as a judge or administrative law judge. And as far as the notaries and justice of the peace, they perform an important function in the community, but they don't really, anybody can apply to be a notary or a justice of the peace as long as they meet certain criteria in terms of their lack of a criminal record, et cetera. So to me, you have to have somebody who has a good demeanor, they have a good knowledge of the law, they have a good temperament, they have patience, and with what they call pro se litigants, or people who represent themselves, that is something that is burgeoning in all of our courts today. And it takes extra patience and extra understanding. People need to understand what the courts are all about. They don't know the procedures, they don't know the law. So it takes extra time to take the trouble, and I think it's a judge's obligation or a clerk's obligation to explain to someone who comes in for help in the court system what it is that is the procedure or the laws that are involved.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, you have the next question.
To direct this one first to Attorney Morneau. In the last several years, the Governor's Council has gained a reputation for, among other things, grandstanding, bickering, even chicanery, which has led to questions about its future that the legislature still considers to this day. There's been no move made on that. That's in their court. But as a Governor's Counselor, what would you do to restore some level of decorum to these Governor's Council meetings as it discharges its duties on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth?
You're right. Over the past, say, 8 years or so, in particular, it seems as though the Governor's Council has gotten contentious at times. That's in part why I'm running for this particular position, is because I don't view this position as a political position. I view it as a professional position. And I intend to bring the professionalism to the Governor's Council chambers. I don't think that the Governor's Council is a place for political grandstanding. I see some of I've been down to the Governor's Council on a number of occasions. I've testified before the Governor's Council, so I have been subject to some of this type of treatment, not only as a witness to the council hearings, but as a witness for potential candidates. I've testified as Bar Association president. I've talked personally to each and every one of the Governor's counselors down there about this particular issue before I applied for it. I spoke to them. I wanted to get to know them, know what they're like. So I spoke to people like Jen Casey. I spoke to people like Mr. Iannello. I spoke to Mr. Kennedy. I spoke to Mr. Juvenville. I've spoke to Marilyn Devaney. And I got to know them a little bit, because I don't want to be I don't want to be part of a process that has political grandstanding when you're talking about something that is as important as putting judges, helping to select judges, and putting them on the bench to serve the community. It should be a very professional environment, and I intend to bring the professionalism that I have brought that I have brought to the courts as a lawyer, that I bring to my clients every day, that I have brought to the Bar Association as the Bar Association president, and I have brought to my community through community service. So that's what I intend to bring to the Governor's Council, and I intend to make sure that the rest of the Governor's Council act in a professional manner. And if they don't, I don't have any problem calling them out on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. Judge Hurley?
Yes, I have been witness firsthand to some of the issues of the more or less the lack of decorum and lack of civility in the Governor's Council. I was on the Judicial Education Committee when I was on the district court, and I did that for, I think, over 10 years. And during that time, I would be the conduit that would educate the new judges in our area, put together their education programs, in some instances be a mentor to those people. And I'm reminded of the situation up in the Berkshires with Mr. McCarthy that was terrible. And it was an embarrassment, I think, in terms of the treatment that he received. Those are the kinds of things that I think you've got to lead by example. I think you've got to remind your fellow governor's counselors that, you know, civility and decorum are important. They're a hallmark of how we should be treating people in courts. And that's how the people who apply for these jobs should be treated as well. You can disagree with them about whether or not they're qualified or competent, but you can do it in a respectful, dignified way. And I would make every effort to remind my fellow counselors of just that. And also, I think it's important that you remember that this form of representation was, originally it was the senators that gave advice and consent to the governor. And the problem was that the senators were all from the eastern part of the state. So the Governor's Council is important to the extent that each of the various districts represents a different geographical area. And I think that should continue. As far as the civility is concerned, I have no problem of knowing the rules of order and all that goes with it. I was president of the city council twice in Springfield, and I think I know a little bit about the rules of evidence and proper decorum in a courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Cary?
I just wanted to follow up on that question about the Governor's Council and its relevance vis-a-vis the legislature. I mean, on the federal level, you have the Senate who provide advice and consent. And some people have described Massachusetts system as being a relic of the colonial past. Now you have regional representation throughout. You have the legislature is not just rooted in Boston, but out here in Western Massachusetts. Why is the Governor's Council still relevant to you, and why not have it have advice and consent by the legislature? And I'll direct that first to Judge Hurley.
Thank you.
Again, I think it's important because of the fact that it ensures representation from an equal part of the population in Western Mass, Central Mass, and down towards Boston. The geographical area for our district is much larger than any of the other districts, but at least we have a voice. At least somebody can go down there and say, Western Mass deserves to have a Supreme Court justice. At one point, we had 2 Supreme Court justices from Western Mass. Judge Spina just left. Now we have none. I think it's important to have a Governor's Council who's willing to go down there and say, fair and square, Western Massachusetts needs to have a Supreme Court justice from our area, from Western Mass. We need to have appellate judges from Western Mass. And if you have all the senators and they're from the eastern part of the state, where's the representation for Western Mass? And, you know, what comes to mind is the old saying, no taxation without representation. To me, it should be no judgeships without representation by a Western Mass representative. And so that's why I think that this form of government still has significant relevance. And there's other things that you can do as well. And again, the shortage of judges out here is real, and it is very concerning to me. Thank you.
Mr. Morneau.
Sure. The answer that I have for that question is until somebody comes up with a better system, having a governor's council is the best system. And I'll tell you why I think it's better than having the Senate approving nominations of judges. It helps to keep and should keep politics completely out of the process. Well, a governor's council has 3 very specific duties that are really important. One is to help with the judicial selection process, providing advice and consent on judges, providing advice and consent with regard to members of the parole board, and voting on pardons and commutations, and then some of the other duties and responsibilities you mentioned. But when you have an elected official that has as its primary duty only one task, that elected official can put his or her whole entire heart and soul into that. They can spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy vetting candidates, talking to other members of the bar, talking to bar associations, talking to other judges, talking to elected officials to make sure that we absolutely get the best person. When you have elected judges, which of course would be the absolute worst system, it's pure politics. And when you have the Senate doing it or other legislators, politics is going to be inevitably a part of the process. And we need to keep political patronage, political favors, and political connections out of getting our judges put onto the bench. Right now in the appeals court, as my opponent mentioned, for the appeals court, we have 3 judges right now on the appeals court. There's a total of about 28 or so on the appeals court. We have 8 districts. Again, that is about what one would expect for this particular region. We are advocating, as Bar Association president, in conjunction with the other Bar Association leaders, we have been very strong advocates for regional diversity on the Supreme Judicial Court. There are 2 spots left for Governor Baker, and I have been advocating before I even decided to run for governor's council for that, and I'm going to continue to advocate for that with the support of everybody. Thank you.
All right, we go back to Matt for a question.
Both of you are currently in practice, both registered as active on the bar, according to the Board of Bar Overseers. Some of you have specific practice in front of some of the boards that are confirmed by the Governor's Council, and of course either of you could appear in court before any judge that would be confirmed by the Governor's Council. How would you handle potential conflicts of interest that could arise from being a part of a confirmation process, but then in your full-time jobs while practicing, perhaps appearing before these judges and other confirmees?
And I believe that should go to Mr. Morneau first.
Sure, thank you. That's a good question. I think it's pretty well established that there is not a conflict of interest for a governor's counselor who votes in favor of or against a particular judge. So a situation could easily arise just the opposite, where a governor's counselor votes no. However, that person gets approved and gets onto the bench. And so I would expect a judge in that particular circumstance to do what he or she is supposed to do, which is rule on the facts, rule on the law, regardless of whether or not a particular governor's counselor voted in favor of or against that particular judge. So I don't really know if there would be anything for me to do as a lawyer with regard to that. I would have full faith and belief that whoever the judge was, whether I voted in favor of the judge or I voted against the judge, that judge would apply the facts and the law to the circumstances that were before him or her at any given time and rule in a fair and impartial manner, especially if it was somebody that I voted in favor of, because that would be one of the criteria, making sure that they'd be able to do that. Thank you.
Judge Hurley?
I would ask that judge to recuse themselves. I don't think that the appearance of someone having gotten a favorable vote from me as a governor's counsel bodes well for trust and faith and confidence in the judicial system. So I would have no problem in asking that person recuse themselves. When I got off the bench, there's a 6-month moratorium. You can't appear anywhere. And even with individual judges, some of whom have retired and they haven't been replaced, when I would appear in front of them, they would recuse themselves. And that's the right thing to do for justice, for the appearance of impropriety not to occur, and for the public to have faith and confidence and trust in our judicial system. There's plenty of judges out there who would be available to hear the cases, and, it's kind of like the right thing to do, so that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Cary?
If I could quickly respond to that.
I didn't say his name. I didn't say anything about him.
She didn't really refer to you, Mr. Morneau.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to do with the responses, when you actually address a point made specifically by the other person by name. Cary?
Okay. This will be addressed to both of you. How's that? You've touched on a couple of things, issues, when I asked about a litmus test. One of you mentioned the death penalty, but wanted to also get, and it's an important subject, even though it is still the law of the land. Wanted to get your thoughts on not only the death penalty, but mandatory minimum sentences. I start with Attorney Morneau, please.
Mandatory minimum sentences should be eliminated. That is a position that one of the best Supreme Judicial Court judges has taken, Ralph Gantz. It's wrong. Mandatory minimums have led to the disproportionate incarceration of African Americans and Latinos, and we know that. The statistics are very, very clear. It applies to nonviolent drug offenders have been incarcerated at a completely disproportionate rate under these mandatory minimum guidelines. A judge is somebody who should be doing the sentencing based upon the facts and circumstances of whatever the case is before him or her. Individual circumstances make a difference. Somebody's background, the circumstances of the crime. One of the judge's primary duties and functions, in fact, a constitutional duty, is to do the sentencing. We should not be leaving our sentencing of individuals up to legislators. It is a judicial function. It's a constitutional function that of judges, and I think it's their primary function. We need to eliminate it. We need to let judges take a look at the facts and circumstances, not legislators who have no idea about what the circumstances are of a particular case. So I am strongly in favor of eliminating mandatory minimums. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Judge Hurley?
Mandatory minimums are something that have more or less ebbed and flowed with the feeling of the public on certain types of issues. I don't think they're good. I think they're bad. I think that you should have a judge be able to exercise their judgment and discretion based upon all of the facts and circumstances of a case. And I would bear in mind situations involving certain amounts of drugs or other types of mandatory minimum sentences, for example, possession of a gun, where I had a case one time where a young black man was in the car with his cousin. His cousin had stolen the gun, and the cousin pulled it out to show the defendant in the case. They were speeding. They were stopped. The defendant had been told by his dad, who testified, that if that happens, take the gun away. Get the gun away from the person if you can. That's what happened. He took the gun away. The next thing you knew, they got stopped. He got arrested for possession of a gun, which is a 1-year mandatory minimum. That case was prosecuted. I heard that case jury waive. I found that person not guilty on the basis of the defense of necessity. If he had been found guilty, he would have gone to jail for a year. So I think if you give the judge the right discretion, you can, I think, have a lot fairer system in terms of sentencing. And, you see the federal courts, they've got more mandatory minimums now. There's less discretion. And I think you have to start trusting your judges. Thank you.
If I may follow up on
Certainly,
this.
Cary.
So how would you go about convincing the public who clamor for some of these mandatory minimum sentences to make them feel safer. And of course, the representatives, the elected officials that vote in the legislature, that vote in favor of these sentences, mandatory sentences.
And let me just add one more twist to that. Do you believe what Cary is talking about, this kind of advocacy, falls within your job description on Governor's Council, or does it fall outside of it? Mr. Morneau, we'll go for you first.
In terms of advocacy, look, to get laws changed, you need the legislature. So you need to work with the legislators to the extent that you want to get a law changed. Governor's counselor cannot change law. That requires the legislature. But let me tell you how I would try to do that. Is what we know is that the criminal justice system has failed us. The policies of the criminal justice system, these lock them up and throw away the key, these mandatory minimums, have failed us. The statistics are very, very clear. They have not deterred drug crimes. They have not reduced drug addiction. We have a huge drug addiction problem, and they have not made our communities that much safer. So those systems have failed us, and in the judges who have served under the lock 'em up and throw away the key mandatory minimum sentence have failed as well. We need to go back to giving the judges discretion so that they can do the things that they want to do, the things that they've been hired to do, the things that they've been trained to do, and perform their constitutional duty.
And we're out of time. Judge Hurley.
Basically, I think that, first of all, there can be a panel put together that would allow for these kinds of issues to be studied. But, they put panels together, they don't include judges. They don't include the district attorneys a lot of times. You have panels that are put together in the legislature that are made up of people in the legislature. And I think you have to have everybody at the table. Defense counsel, district attorneys, sheriffs, judges, and you have to come up with a system that makes sense. And maybe it's letting the jurors become involved in whether or not something warrants a mandatory minimum sentence. All right? For example, with the school zones, which has been reduced in terms of the number of feet. Those are the kinds of things. And, I was never the kind of lock-em-up judge that Mr. Morneau mentioned. And I think it's important that you have compassion.
And we're out of time, Judge Hurley, on this.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Matt?
It is possible, depending on how the timing works out, that whoever becomes the next governor's counselor from Western Massachusetts will be voting on some Supreme Judicial Court nominees, which will be part of cementing Governor Baker's legacy on the high court. We've already heard about a litmus test in terms of certain types of issues, abortion, death penalty, same-sex marriage rights. What are you looking for when a Supreme Judicial Court nominee comes before you? And what do you want to see in that kind of nominee, who will be essentially the highest court official, except for the U.S. Supreme Court, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? And we'll start with Judge Hurley.
Basically, I want someone who has been in the trenches in terms of being in a courtroom, in terms of being someone who has practiced law in various areas. They can't be experts in everything. The Supreme Judicial Court deals with cases that run the gamut, from civil to criminal, from administrative appeals in some instances. So it's really across the board. But they have to have, I think, a good working knowledge of the law. They have to have a good working knowledge of evidence. And they have to be aware of, as I've said before, the character of the communities and the types of things that can make a difference. So basically, I think that most importantly, again, it doesn't matter what court you're on, you have to have a good demeanor. You have to have a good temperament. You have to treat people with respect. You have to have a good knowledge of the law, and you also have to have the ability to deal with 6 other people that are you're going to discuss cases with, and you have to be able to more or less prove your point. Again, everything that Mr. Morneau said he was in favor of, that's the law of this Commonwealth. Those are things that should be supported, and not things that people should try to legislate by judicial fiat. So that is something that I would look at as well. And are they respected in their particular areas? Are they respected in their communities? All right, we want good people that are going to do a good job for everybody in this Commonwealth.
Thank you. Mr. Morneau.
Sure. When you're looking at the Supreme Judicial Court, which is the highest court in this state, those are the judges that are deciding our most important societal issues at the end of the day. They're deciding our constitutional issues. These are the judges that decide whether same-sex marriage is constitutional. These are the judges that decide issues with regard to the funding of abortions. These are the judges that decided whether or not the death penalty was constitutional or not. So while these things may be the law of the land, they can very easily change. And as we know from this debate and from the newspaper reports, Governor Baker has the most unique opportunity to appoint 5 justices to the Supreme Judicial Court. Those issues can change with one decision. We talk about, President Obama having the opportunity to appoint one person to the Supreme Court and change laws of the land. Governor Baker has an opportunity to promote 5. So I'm looking for justices that have core democratic values, that have the values of the constituents that I will be elected to represent. And that means that they have to support a woman's right to choose. They have to support the death penalty. They have to be against the death penalty, and they have to be for same-sex marriage. They also have to have, you always have to have work ethic, temperament, intellect, and community values. You have to understand the people that come before you and the issues that come before you. When you're looking at judges on the Supreme Judicial Court, they have to have the intellect. They have to be able to think about not just the decision today, but what the impact is of that decision today, for the next generation, and for the generation after that, because those are the biggest decisions that are made by any judges in this Commonwealth. Thank you.
I'm going to do a quick follow-up, answer a minute each from you. As I understand from what the candidates have said, we do not have someone from Western Massachusetts on the Supreme Judicial Court at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's go first with you, Mr. Morneau. How important is it for you to see someone from Western Massachusetts being nominated by Governor Baker?
It's very important to have regional diversity on the Supreme Judicial Court. We have had regional diversity on that court for hundreds of years. I went back through, I took a look at it when this issue came up. Governor Baker has publicly stated that he believes that regional diversity is important, and it is important because people out here, people in Western Massachusetts, are different. We are different. We have some different values from people in the East, and we need to make sure that we have somebody out here that on the Supreme Judicial Court that is going to represent the values of the people in Western Massachusetts. I was a leader in this cause. I got together the leaders of the other bar associations, and we put together not just one, but 2 letters to Governor Baker with regard to this issue, expressing to him exactly how important we believed it was to have regional diversity on the Supreme Judicial Court. And I will continue to do that if elected as your next governor's counselor.
Judge Hurley?
It's critically important that we have representation in the western part of the state from Region 8. I would point out that Judge Graney was in fact a swing vote on the gay marriage vote. And all of those decisions were made, gay marriage and abortion as well, on constitutional bases. So too, the trend with the death penalty is that it's unconstitutional as cruel and unusual punishment. These are not things where people can just go around willy-nilly and enact new laws. These are constitutional principles that were decided by justices based on the Constitution. So I think it's important that we have somebody from Western Mass. I've said it from the beginning, and I will keep saying it, and I will work diligently and continuously in conjunction with all of the leadership out here to get the job done, to get somebody from Western Mass on the Supreme Court. Thank you.
All right, we're coming up toward the end of our hour. I want to thank Cary of New England Public Radio, and Matt Safransky from Western Massachusetts Politics and Insight for their participation tonight. We have got closing statements from both candidates. And Judge Hurley, you can give your first closing statement. It's 2 minutes.
I believe I'm supposed to go last. I went first on the opening.
Oh, okay. Little clarity issue. I thought we were going to reverse it, so Mr. Morneau goes last, you go first, because you went first to begin with?
I went first to begin with.
Right.
I don't have a problem. I'll go. That's okay.
All right.
Doesn't matter to me. So thank you, Mr. Dobbs, for moderating this. Thank you, panelist members, for your great questions. And thank you to members of the audience for listening to us tonight, for learning a little bit more about our positions and a little bit more about what the governor's counselor does. Running for governor's counselor or any political office was never on my bucket list. I never thought that I would be here. But I am running because I know how important judges are to our communities and to our families, and I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference for all of you. I want to make a difference for my family. I want to make a difference for your family, not just today, but for generations to come. And that's why I'm running for governor's office. Like many of you, I am very frustrated with where our society has gone, where it is today, and the progress that we have made, not just in society, but our criminal justice system. I want to make a difference. I want to move it forward. I want to be progressive. And if you want to, like me, and you want change, now is the time to change. Now is the time for change. I am the vote for change, and I ask for your vote on Thursday, September 8th. Thank you.
Okay, Judge Hurley.
All right, thank you very much to Springfield Focus, or Focus Springfield, and Mike, to you and our panel as well of media panelists. I would indicate that when I retired, I had no intention whatsoever of ever running for political office. And I don't consider this to be something of a political nature. I think it should be depoliticized. But I do know, after living it firsthand, that judicial vacancies are critical in this area. And judicial vacancies are fluid. Before the end of the year, there will be another 6 vacancies in the district court. And that's going to go on all of next year. And that cap that my opponent was talking about has nothing to do with where those vacancies are going to be filled from. And I am going to Boston and say that we need our fair share. We need those vacancies filled to be able to deliver justice to the people of Region 8. Justice delayed is justice denied. It's been an honor for me to serve as a district court judge. It's been an honor for me to serve as mayor of Springfield and as a city councilor in Springfield. I have served with honor, integrity, and always had the best interests of the public in mind. That will be my goal as governor's counsel. I hope to bring civility to that role and to my fellow governor's counselors, and I will do the very best job for the people of Region 8 so that when they go to court, they know they have a court date that will be kept. A promise that's not kept results in nothing but disappointment for everyone. We have a judicial system that we must right the ship of. I thank you for listening tonight, and I respectfully ask that you vote early for Hurley on Thursday, September 8th. Thank you very much.
I want to thank both candidates for participating in this debate. This is an important position to decide, and this decision is going to be decided with the primary on September 8th. This year, the primary is on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday. It might confuse people at first, but you should mark it on your calendars to go out and vote and do your civic duty. On behalf of Focus Springfield, thanks for watching this evening, and be sure to vote.